I'm Justin Davis, and this is Drone Camps RC. This little $10 drone right here will get you started in your drone business and kickstart your career in aerial photography. And I'm going to tell you why in this video this little drone can help you get started with your business or make you a more proficient drone pilot if that's what you're deciding you want to do. If you're looking to get into the hobby, you found the right video, guys. I'm Justin Davis of Drone Camps. We were conceptualized around 2013, and now we have over 32 million views on our channel around the world, teaching people the basic fundamentals of learning how to fly a drone. And in 2014, I opened up a store in North Carolina. We had a bricks and mortar store, and we sold drones all around the US. Also consulting and working with the government to do various types of drones for their own use for government purposes. So everything from recreational to commercial to government level drones I've been involved with over the years. So I've also been flying FPV, since single rotor helicopters. We built and implemented original hard mount servos, gimbals, and brushless gimbals. So there's been this whole evolution of different types of cameras on drones and flying aircraft for the past 50 years or more. US government's been doing it forever with glider recon, and now we're to the point where we're implementing GPS onto them. We have return to home and all that good stuff, as you probably know about because you've been looking at DJI products. And before you start flying DJI or FPV or any type of assisted visual live stream device back to your phone, tablet, or FPV goggles, if that's what you're looking to get into, learn how to fly line of sight first with something like this. This is absolutely what I started with years ago, a little quadcopter very similar to this one. And this one comes in at around $10 with one little battery that is USB chargeable. It also comes with another setup for $16. You can get 3 of these batteries, which is probably the combo you should go for. They are a little 1S battery. They are actually 200 milliamp, and they'll get you about a 5-minute flight time or more. We're going to test that today. But most importantly, we're going to teach you the orientation of how to fly a drone line of sight first before you go outside and fly. It's super important, and I guarantee you that everyone else in the community, if you ask that question on the forums, should I learn line of sight first or FPV first? They'll tell you to learn line of sight first. Most of the original pilots out there started that way and then graduated to FPV later. So this is a very important progress to make in your progression as a drone pilot. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put these little batteries on the charger that came along with it. Little USB charger plugs into your computer or into an AC adapter on the wall, and it charges around 1 amp, I believe, to charge these batteries up individually in around 10 minutes time. So I'm going to go ahead and get all these batteries charged. We've got 3 of them today, and we will do our first tutorial of Drone Camps 101 ground school. So we're going to go ahead and teach you how the basics of flying a drone, the mechanics, the stick control, and the orientations of throttle on the left, yaw, pitch and roll on the right, and how to do a safe takeoff, as well as some beginner circuits that you can do right there at home yourself. So you can practice these circuits over and over and get more proficient, and then learn how to do what we call forward flight. So let's go ahead and get into it now, and I will be your guide and your coach going into the first day with your drone. So I'll put the link down below for this one, as well as the Know Before You Fly website and the FAA's website if you're looking to register your brand new drone that's over the 250 gram mark. This one is under 250 grams, so you do not have to register this one. This one is classified basically as a toy. So let's go ahead now and jump right into it. I'll show you what's in the box included with this little guy. This is the Eachine E009, and a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and do some flying together, and we'll teach you the basics. Here we go. All right, guys, so this is the basics that you're going to start out with. Now, This is, again, the E009 from Eachine. It doesn't have a whole lot of different modes on here, but what it does have is 2.4 radio. This is the transmitter that comes along with it. It's a compact transmitter with throttle on the left-hand side right here. This will be your yaw axis. So what that does, it spins the drone front, left, and right, as well as can rotate all the way in a 360 on that axis. The next axis that you're going to learn is the forward pitch axis, and so that will tilt the drone forwards or backwards. And the next axis you're going to learn is the roll axis, which is commonly referred to roll, or the aileron axis. So that will actually tip us to the left and to the right. So we will learn all of this together in the circuits that are coming up in this video, and how to use both thumbs at one time. There are a few different ways that people fly in our hobby. They do the pinch method, which is this, and you can start out doing whatever is more comfortable for you. Some people like to pinch, and some people just like to use the thumbs. And I'm a thumb pilot. I usually use my thumbs. I don't usually pinch. Some people feel like they have better control like that, but it's totally up to you. Now, also on this drone, we have two different speeds as well. We have a high and low speed, so that is selectable on the left-hand side of the transmitter. You can see this little high-low icon right here, and over on the right-hand side we have 360 button, and that is going to do a 360 flip and roll, and whichever way you're pointing the stick, the drone should flip to. So you can use your right stick and go to the right, the left, forwards, or backwards there. So that will determine the way your drone flips, and that's just kind of an extra option on there that's kind of fun for kids, or just seeing it yourself. Just make sure that the drone is up pretty high before you do that. It also has an onboard gyroscope, which is going to give us a stabilized flight. So that means that it's not altitude hold, so you're going to have to maintain the correct amount of throttle to keep it maintain a certain altitude. But what you're going to do is you're going to learn how to keep this drone in one spot by doing it manually. There's no infrared assistance on the bottom of this, or any type of ground visual cameras on there, so otherwise known as optical flow, and those are on the more expensive drones. But this drone is under 250 grams. This is the 3 battery combo, and again, these are the 1S batteries. And what's great about a 1S battery as a beginner is that this battery is harder to destroy flying it down low versus a 2S battery. And S simply means that we have one cell here. So in our hobby, we call it 1S, 2S, 3S, 4S, 5S, 6S, and those are most of the batteries that you'll hear about. And that just translates to S will mean how many cells and layers a battery has that combine all into one power cable. So all those layers together will create whatever S it is. So this is a 1S battery, and this goes into the charger right here, and you can't put it in backwards. It has 2 little teeth on the bottom. Plug this into the wall, and it should charge up in about 10 minutes time per battery. And remember, you're not flying it totally down to dead. You want to stop flying it at a certain point, but it does have a low voltage protector on here that won't let you do that. So you don't have to worry too much about that being a problem. So we have 3 batteries to start again. We have a prop remover tool here. This is a plastic prop remover tool. You just stick this underneath the prop and pull it off if you break one, and you get an extra set in here as well. So I'll try to put some links to some extra parts for this drone if they have them. Now also, this drone itself, again, is under the 250 gram mark. I do have a battery on here, so we're just going to zero out the scale. Let me show you that weight on this quad. You can call it a quadcopter, a quad, or a drone. Now it's 19.4 grams, and that's your total takeoff weight. So let's go ahead now and we'll go over the transmitter, and then we'll start doing some flying. So before takeoff, the main important thing that you have to do with the E009 is you want to come up off your table or whatever you're launching off of with a little bit of throttle, not too much, because this really is very sensitive. So when you're learning how to fly this, and I do the same thing when I'm teaching people how to learn kiteboarding, for example, the minimal movement on the sticks is better than really kind of manhandling the sticks here. If you go softer on the sticks, the drone is going to react less. You'll actually probably avoid hitting the wall with your drone. So very important that you do minimal, tiny little throttle adjustments. I mean, super tiny. So we don't want to just go like this with the throttle, like an RC car. So you will get some bad reactions from this drone if you try to fly with too much aggression. But we also have the on-off switch right here, and we're going to plug in the quad first, and then we're going to turn on the drone. And once we plug in the quad, I'll just give you an example real quick. It lines up a certain way inside here, just like this, and you'll see that LEDs start to flash. This is the front of the drone where the green lights are, the blue are in the rear, and the props always go on this drone the same way. So if you have two props go off this drone, this will sort of help you get the quad props back on there the right way, and I'll show you that in a minute. We also turn on the transmitter just like that, and you see it's flashing, and right now we have no control, so you have to activate this quad. So I'm going to turn it off again real quick, and you should see it start flashing again as it looks for the 2.4 signal. And I'm just going to restart the drone again, and you want to get the drone flat on a level surface within about within about 3 seconds, so that the accelerometer can initialize properly. It needs to be on a level surface. So now I'm going to turn on the transmitter again, and see it's still blinking. It's not active yet, and the way to activate it is throttle all the way up and then back down, and now it's linked up to the drone, and now we have throttle here. So we are ready for takeoff. But before we take off, I just want to show you the basics of prop orientation on most of the drones out there. They are set up this way, and I like to remind people to think RTR, and what that means is right turn rear. So you start with the right motor in the rear, and that one is clockwise, so that's a right turn motor, and then diagonally up, this will be motor number 4. They're numbered like this: number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this motor up here diagonally across is also a right turn motor. Usually diagonally across in quadcopter land is actually going to be this same orientation. Now there's also a props out configuration, which would put this motor down here as a left turn prop, and then when we're up at the front of the quad, they rotate out from the frame. But this one, both of these front ones rotate inward. So with some certain types of tiny whoops, as we classify them, like to have outward turning props. So that's the biggest difference between these two. Some people say that it's better for outdoor flying with the outward facing props, but today we're going to fly with the RTR setup here: right turn rear. So right turn, left turn, right turn, motor number 1, 2, 3, and 4. So here we go. Okay guys, so I have the 360 camera up here just to give you a different perspective during this lesson, so you can see a different view. We're going to go ahead now and we're going to turn on your drone for the first time. We're going to plug in the quadcopter first, so go ahead and plug in the battery to the drone and get that drone on the surface within about 3 to 5 seconds. And you want it to be completely level so that the accelerometer properly calibrates to the gyro. Now we're going to go ahead and turn on the transmitter, and you'll hear it beep one time when you turn it on. Go ahead and bring the left stick all the way up and all the way down, and that's going to bring it down to the most bottom point of the throttle. You should see that the lights are green. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do an accelerometer calibration. That will calibrate the gyro in the drone and help it fly better properly. So go ahead and press that bottom left button right there, and it should do a calibration. You'll see the lights start flashing on the drone, and then they'll go back to solid. Let's do that one more time. And now it's calibrating the internal gyro. So now we should be good to do our first takeoff, and it's very important that you use minimal throttle on your first takeoff. If the drone spins around on you, stop what you're doing, bring your throttle down to the 0 point, bring your drone over and set it down again on a flat surface, and we're going to do another takeoff. So we'll see how mine goes here. I'm just going to go ahead and give it a little bit of throttle here and come up for my first hover. And this is what we're doing right now for the first part of this tutorial, guys, is that we are learning how to hover in one spot and not let it move around a lot. If the drone drifts to one side or the other, basically correct it by using your right thumb. So we're trying to maintain an altitude here, and it's going to be really hard at first. But this is what you need to learn how to do to learn proper orientation, is throttle management first and hovering in one spot with the drone rear facing you. That'll keep everything in perspective for you as far as your controls go. If you spin the drone around with a drone that's facing you, all of the controls are going to be reversed except for the throttle. So that is something that you're going to learn a little bit later in this tutorial. But first thing you want to do is you really could spend an entire battery just learning how to hover it in front of you, just like this, in one spot. Try to keep it in about a 6-foot box. If you can keep it within a 6-foot box, do that to start. Next, do it in a 3-foot box, say over top of your coffee table. Try to hover it right over top of your coffee table and keep it there. It's like a video game. Pretty fun to do that, but let's do a whole battery just like this, keeping it in one spot and not using any other stick movements except for a little bit of throttle and your right stick. And what I'm having to do right now is kind of just keep pushing it forward a little bit. Mine wants to drift back at me a little bit, so it's coming this way when I have my hands off the stick, and then it's also drifting to the right. So when it drifts to the right, you're going to push it slightly left, and it'll bring it back over your coffee table. So that's something that you're going to have to practice. Right and left, forward and back. And you're just going to continue to hover over your coffee table or whatever you decide to hover over, where you're going to land for the remainder of this battery. And then we'll move on to the next part of the tutorial. But right now it's looking good. And as long as you calibrate that gyro before you take off every single time, the drone will fly great. And these drones are meant to drift around in space, guys. Don't do any type of trim. You'll notice there is no trim on this controller. And most of the time when we're flying drones, you don't ever touch the trim. I've had a lot of people email me and say my drone drifts left or right, or what should I do? Don't do any trim to offset that. RC airplanes, you do trim adjustments, but not with quadcopters or drones. Now let's go ahead and let's do our first landing together. So we're going to spot our landing on the table, and I'm just going to slowly decrease the throttle until I come down to the table. And there is no kill switch on this transmitter, so I'm just going to come down low to the table, and I'm going to spot my landing right in the center of the table, and I'm just going to set the quad down gently just like that with the throttle at 0 on the left there. And I did my first landing, and hopefully you did your first landing as well. So let's move on to the next part of the tutorial, which is going to be circuits. Okay guys, you've done your first takeoff, you've done your first battery of just hovering with the quads rear facing you, the pilot. That's very important to learn that orientation. What that does is it helps you understand throttle management, keeping the drone at a certain altitude, and right stick operation of pitch and roll to keep the quad in a particular area. So that's what we're going to learn first. The next thing we're going to learn is a basic circuit. And the first circuit that I always have people start out with is the square circuit. We're going to go right to left around that square, and we're going to stop at each point along the way and come back to the original starting point. So we're going to go around the square and come back to start. So first thing we're going to do is plug in your quad, and we're going to get it on a level surface really quickly. So within 3 to 5 seconds, we're going to get that quad down on the flat surface here. And I'm going to turn my transmitter off. It was on. I'm going to turn it back on now. And I'm going to bring the throttle stick up, all the way up, and all the way down. And now the throttle is active. The throttle will not work until you do that procedure. So very important there. So we're going to go ahead and do our launch again. Before we do that, as always, we're going to press the gyro calibration button on the bottom left of your transmitter. Press that, you'll see the lights flashing on this little drone. And when they come to solid, you're ready for takeoff. Now it looks good, so I'm going to go ahead and take off. And we're going to do our first drone camp's square circuit. So we're going to get over here into position. We have an imaginary square out in front of us. So we're going to start at point number 1. And imagine this is kind of like a waypoint. And a waypoint is a series of points that the drone will fly to. But in this tutorial, we're going to be doing this manually. We're going to do manual waypoints, okay? So first, square circuit from right to left. Start out here. You already understand how to hover in one spot. So
we're going to move to position number 2, which is straight out in front of us, and we're going to stop there. And we're going to pretend that this is a waypoint, and you're just going to hover there in that spot, keeping the quad in that spot at that same altitude the best you can. So that's looking pretty good, guys. I'm drifting a little bit. Maybe I'll move it over to the right and get it back to that imaginary point. And that point number 2. Now we're going to go to point number 3, which is straight to the left. So using your right stick only, try to maintain just a little tiny bit of throttle to hold your altitude. And this, again, this quadcopter does not have altitude hold, so you're going to do your best to keep the quad level at one altitude and in the same space using the right stick. You don't have to incorporate any yaw right now. We're not doing any yaw. So this teaches you right stick and throttle management. So now we're going to go to waypoint number 4 here, and that's over here at this spot, our imaginary square. We're going to stop right there. Just chill the quadcopter right out at that point. And now we're going to come over here to your original starting point, which is waypoint number 1 in your circuit. Very good, guys. You've completed your first drone camp's square circuit. That feels pretty good, right? So let's go ahead and move on to step 2. Step 2 is going to be square circuit from the left to right. So we're going to do this in opposite fashion now. We're going to start out here, and we're just going to use our right stick, go over to the left, and stop right there in this next position here. And try not to hit the wall or other things around your house. But if you've already learned how to do a stable hover, you should be fine. So now the next part of your square circuit is there. Now we're going to move over to the right, and we're going to go to this position here. We're going to stop here. We're going to hover a minute, and then we're going to come back to this original point. And now you've done your second square circuit in an opposite fashion. So pretty cool. Now that you know how to properly maintain your altitude and work with your right stick, this is only right stick and throttle implementation at this point. So now we're going to incorporate yaw, and this is where it gets really tricky, guys. So we're going to bring the drone back to level here, and we're going to go ahead and land, and we're going to start with a fresh battery, because now we're going to do a yaw tutorial, and we're going to learn yaw orientation and a little bit of forward flight.
Okay, so at this point, you've learned how to do a basic takeoff, a basic hover, and learned the right stick. We've also done a square circuit from right to left and left to right. So you've gone through the basic circuits to learn throttle management and the right stick. So now we're going to incorporate the left stick on your transmitter, moving left and right axis. That is your yaw axis. That makes the quadcopter nose turn left and right. Very similar to a helicopter, except you're using the tail to rotate. This one uses counter-rotating forces to turn each propeller each way, so and move the nose left and right. We could get more into that in a different tutorial, learning the basics of quad orientation and movement, but this is the basics of learning how to learn yaw on your quadcopter. Very, very important. So this will also help you understand flying the quad coming back to you, line of sight. If you ever get in a situation where your quadcopter is way out there, you lose video signal on your drone, how do you get it back to you without your device's implementation and live stream? If that live stream stops or the app crashes and you don't have any video from your drone back to your device, this type of tutorial, learning how to fly this from line of sight, will absolutely help you recover your quadcopter and bring it back line of sight. So if your goggles go out, your goggle battery dies, it's really important to be able to fly line of sight. So this might save your drone your thousands of dollar investment in the future. So let's go ahead and plug in the quad now, and we're going to do some yaw flying. So we're going to do what we call a circular fashion circuit. So this is going to implement yaw, and we're going to come up into a hover, and then we're going to go around in a circle using the yaw stick as well as the right stick. So we're going to be flying with both thumbs, and we're going to be doing throttle this time. So get ready. This is going to be a little more advanced than the last circuit. And we're going to do it right to left first, and then we're going to do it left to right next. And after that, we'll get more into some reversed flying. So that will be the next step after the circular circuit. So let's go ahead and do our takeoff. We'll go ahead and first arm the drone up and down to arm it, and then we're also going to press the gyro accelerometer calibration button. So now it's calibrating. And once the lights stop flashing, you should be good to take off. And mine is almost done. And now we're ready to take off. So go ahead and do
a little bit of throttle to come up into a hover. And now we're going to go ahead and do right to left circle. So now we're going to use the yaw stick to go in a circle, but we're also going to keep the rear of the quad facing you, okay? So think about that. As we go around the circle, we're not actually flying a straight circle around. We're going to keep the quad rear facing us. So very important in this first circular circuit. So we're going to go ahead and go to the right and go around in a circle, and we're going to come back, okay? So don't use a whole lot of yaw at this point. Just minimal amount of left stick, okay? And you can see that my drone is kind of bouncing up and down, so that's me just using very minimal input for the throttle. Look, if I really crank on the throttle, watch what this quad will do. It'll go way up pretty fast, and you might hit the ceiling. So these props are not protected when you go up and hit your ceiling, so be careful about that. So now we're going to go again to the right and go all the way around. And you can actually use just the right stick only to do that circle. So if you want to try that again, just using the right stick only, try to maintain your throttle on the left, just leave it right where it is, and just learn how to do those quickly. And you can do them big or small, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. Just make sure that the quad moves around in a circle. Now we're going to do it from left to right, okay? Now left to right. Very good. Now we're going to do it left to right one more time. And then we're going to come back into a stable hover. So now you're in a stable hover again. Let's go ahead and do a forward flight, your first forward flight, and then we're going to turn around and come back with the controls opposite of what they were. So this is really interesting, and try not to hit your TV when you do this, but I'm going to fly toward the TV using the right stick only, try to maintain my altitude, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the left thumb and turn the quad facing me. Now what happens, you probably crashed at this point if you just did what I did. Left becomes right and right becomes left. And forward, when you push forward on the stick, it will come to you. And when you push back on the stick, it'll make the quad fly away from you. So very important to know that left is right and right is left. So if I push to the left, I'm going to bring it a little closer so you can see it. If I push to the left, it's going to go right. And if I push right, it's going to go to the left. You see that? Very interesting. So you're going to have to keep playing around with your yaw to really slowly understand flying towards yourself. And this will really get you out of a lot of trouble if you lose FPV or device assistance for your live stream. And being able to bring the quadcopter back from hundreds of yards out, line of sight, is a real skill that sometimes you should practice with a cheaper drone. And you can even do it with altitude hold drones as well, and just practice that line of sight, return to home. Fly it back to the home base and practice line of sight landing your GPS quadcopter. That will really help. So we're going to use that yaw stick again to spin it around so that the rear is facing us, and now left is left and right is right. But isn't that interesting? So if you keep practicing flying what we call nose in is from the heli days, from helicopter flying. If you go take a helicopter lesson at your local AMA airfield, they will teach you nose in flying. And this is quadcopter nose in flying. You see those green LEDs right there? And if I go to the left, it goes right. And if I push the right stick right, it goes left. And push forward on the right hand stick to bring the quad towards you. And just practice this for a whole battery. Nose in flying for a whole battery. And then on your third battery, if you bought the 3 battery version, you can practice forward flight in the house. And we'll do that on the next battery coming right up. We're going to spin the drone around I'm gonna try not to hit the helmet there. And we're gonna come down to our safe landing point. And now we're gonna switch out and do our first forward flying together. Here we go. Okay guys, last part of this tutorial, we're just gonna go ahead and come up into a stable hover, and then we're gonna walk around behind the drone and fly it as if we were flying FPV. So this is a lot of fun. You can do this around the house. So we're just gonna gradually, slowly leave this room, and I think we'll go down the hallway first. And this is super cool. So imagine you're walking up flights of stairs, going down hallways, navigating your house with your quadcopter. Super, super cool. So much fun. Now we're gonna stop to try to avoid hitting the cabinets. Isn't that fun? I mean, that is so cool. Now I'm gonna try not to hit the doorway there. And this really teaches you a lot about throttle and yaw and roll and pitch and all the basics and the mechanics of flying your quadcopter. At this point, you should be getting pretty proficient at all of your axes. And you know, if you bump into a wall, it'll just bounce off. Check that out. Just bounces off. If you hit it really hard, you're probably gonna crash. And that's looking pretty good, guys. You guys are doing great. So if you're still with me at this point, my battery starts to flash. The battery is dying. So the drone may try to land itself, or it may fall out of the air. We'll see what happens. We're just gonna try to make it back to our original coffee table and landing point. And we made it back to home, guys. The battery's flashing, so I'm gonna set it down right there in the middle of the coffee table. Kind of a hard landing, but we've now completed our first line of sight tutorial on the Drone Camps channel, guys. I hope you appreciated that and enjoyed flying it. And use this tutorial to practice your circuits and learn how to be a better drone pilot. If you want to pass this video on to other new guys or girls getting into our hobby, or you want to learn how to professionally fly, this little guy is absolutely the way to get into being a proficient drone pilot and really, really be a much better pilot in the future. So a very minimal investment, but one of the best investments you'll make. And you'll probably have this little guy years from now when you have your business going. So thanks again for watching, guys. I'm Justin Davis. Please do subscribe, because I always try to bring you honest reviews and helpful tutorials right here on the channel, guys. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you on the next one.